Good morning. My name is Jenny Hobbs, and I serve on the board of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I welcome everyone to our service this morning and welcome visitors to our open and inclusive community of faith. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we explore these paths. I would like to especially welcome our guests and welcome again those who have visited us before. Visitors, it is the custom of our congregation to invite you to stand and give your name and where you are from, if you feel comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors who would like to introduce themselves? Welcome. Welcome, Steve. Thank you for joining us. Go right ahead. Welcome, Jeff. Thank you. Hi, Kathy. Welcome. Hi, Eileen. Welcome to everyone visiting today. Please join us after the service for coffee hour. We would love to have a chance to get to know you better. Our Congregational Life Coordinator, Mary Law, and our Director of Religious Education, Steve Cooper, and all of our members are eager to meet you. I will also be present after the service in Creeves Hall and would be happy to speak to you as well. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the back of the sanctuary should anyone feel the need to leave for any reason. There are chairs provided for your convenience. As we begin our service, please silence all electronic devices. Sorry, Pat, bad timing. Thank you so much.
I'm like one of those Japanese bowls that were made long ago. I have some cracks in me. They have been filled with gold. That's what they used back then. They had a bowl to mend. It did not hide the cracks. It made them shine instead. So now every old scar shows from every time I broke, and anyone's eyes can see I'm not what I used to be. But in a collector's mind, all of these jagged lines make me more beautiful and worth a much higher price. I'm like one of those Japanese bowls. I was made long ago. I have some cracks you can see how they shine of gold.
Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit, touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
Unitarian Universalist minister Andrew Pakala writes, "We arrive together here, travelers on life's journey, seekers of meaning, of love, of healing, of justice, of truth. The journey is long, and joy and woe accompany us at every step. None is born that does not die. None feels pleasure that does not also feel pain. The tear has not yet dried on the cheek, but the lips curve sweetly in a smile. Numerous are our origins, our paths, our destinations, and yet, happily, our ways have joined together here today. May our joining be a blessing. May it bring comfort to those who are in pain. May it bring hope to those who despair. May it bring peace to those who tremble in fear. May it bring wisdom and guidance for our journeys. And though this joining may be for just a moment in time, the moment is all we can ever be certain of. May we embrace this and every instant of our lives." The ending of the old year and the beginning of the new are a time of conflicting feelings. We are releasing things we no longer need or don't really want. And in the new year, we hope to embrace a newer, better self and world. Some of us are letting go of the last year in which we embraced a loved one, or are moving beyond a part of our lives which we will miss. The new year lies ahead, full of promise and unbroken dreams, yet scary in its very unchartedness. We know there will be struggle and hardship, joys and concerns, and inevitably, change. The one thing that we can know is that none of us need face it alone. This, our church community, will be there to walk with us, to help us to grow in hope, to cheer our advances and to lend a hand, to rejoice in our happiness and share in our sorrow.
As we approach the ending of the year 2018, we wish to commemorate those who have passed away, to remember how their lives have touched ours, to feel compassion for how deep, yet how fragile, are our human bonds. Our ritual this morning will be to name the dead for remembrance, followed by the chiming of a bell, to bring our thoughts again to those we will no longer see, but will remember. The first remembrance is for prominent people. There are so many gone this year. I will name only a few. Jacqueline Amay Rosemary Cal Makin and Felipe Gomez Alonso, children who died while in immigration custody. Scientist Stephen Hawking, politicians George H.W. Bush and John McCain, artists Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding, and many more. Blessed be these we hold in our heart memory. Our second remembrance is for those in our congregation who have passed away this year. Sally Friedman and Elliot Politzer. Blessed be these we hold in our heart memory. And our third remembrance is for your friends and family and people who are important to you. Please call out these names that we all might hear and know them.
Jean Clancy Carroll. My mother, Joan Beatty.
Harry Hall.
Jory George
Sutherland. Evelyn Samuels.
Lorraine Keener. My grandmother.
Blessed be these we hold in our heart memory. Our fourth remembrance will be for the multitude of people unknown to us, but known in their human circumstance, of dying in natural disasters, political upheavals, wars, individual acts of violence, and self-harm. Blessed be these we hold in our heart memory. Thank you. And now we will rise in body and spirit and join in singing hymn number 1007, There's a River Flowing in My Soul.
It Matters by Robert R. Walsh. I knew a man who had printed on his stationery this proverb: "Nothing is settled, everything matters." It established a certain ambiance for reading his letters, as if to say, what you are about to read is to be taken seriously, but is not final. I remember him and his proverbs sometimes, especially when it seems impossible to change the world or myself in any significant way. Times like the beginnings of New Year's. "Sorry, Jim," I say. "It's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made, losses have been suffered, there have been growth and decay, there have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether this year, one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident. But now it's settled. One day this year, I was present just when someone needed me. Another day, I was busy doing something else when I was needed. One day, I said something to a friend that injured our relationship. Another day, I said something that enabled a person to see life in a new way. The best and worst of those days are now written. All my tears of joy or sorrow cannot erase it. If I stay with my meditation long enough, the reply comes. "Robbie," says Jim, "you have misunderstood the proverb. It is true you cannot escape the consequences of your actions or the chances of the world. But what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be. The meaning of a life is not contained within one act, or one day, or 1 year. As long as you are alive, the story of your life is still being told, and the meaning is still open. As long as there is life in the world, the story of the world is still being told. What is done, but nothing is settled. And if nothing is settled, then everything matters. Every choice, every act in the new year matters. Every word, every deed is making the meaning of your life and telling the story of the world. Everything matters in the year coming, and, more importantly, everything matters today.
To live in community is to make mistakes. At this moment of change, in this season of contemplation, we reflect on those things we did this year that we would rather not have done. We reflect on that which we did do, which we did not do, and regret our inaction. We remember with compassion that we are imperfect beings, yet also beings capable of positive change. We are now going to sing response hymn number 1037 in the Teal hymnal. I invite you to remain seated, and I will read the printed text, and then we will sing the response together. The response goes like this. Sure, let's sing it through one time. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For remaining silent when a single voice would have made the difference. We forgive ourselves and each other. For each time our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause. We forgive ourselves and each time that greed has blinded us to the needs of others. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For selfishness that set us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
A communion is a coming together, a way for us to become one. It is a reminder of the commitment we have toward each other and this community. The church year here at DuC is divided by communions. Water communion in the fall that brings us together after a summer of comings and goings. It begins our church year. And at the end of the church year, flower communion again brings us together, reminding us that together we make a whole that is beautiful. Today, we will celebrate fire communion. Fire communion separates the end of the calendar year from the beginning, helping us to put in perspective the joys and sorrows, the changes and transitions, the ups and downs of the year. It offers us another way to pass life through the fire of thought, to let go of those ideas, feelings, and experiences that possessed us during the year of 2018. Perhaps they were sadness, loss, change, anger, resentment, and allow us to move towards joy, acceptance, transition, happiness, and contentment. You are now invited to write down that which you want to release from this past year. Perhaps one word will sum up what you want to get rid of, possibly a phrase. When you have written this word or phrase on the blank sheet in your order of service, please come up to the table, take a deep breath, and let go of what you need to as you place the paper in the cauldron. After our service is complete, you are invited to accompany us when we take the cauldron outside and burn these resentments, grievances, angers, and losses. They will be removed from our lives, allowing us to move into the new year renewed, lightened, and free. If you need a pencil, please raise your hand and a steward will bring you one. I invite you to come forward when you are ready and let go of what you do not need for the new year.
How the Stars Get in Your Bones by Jan Richardson. Sapphire, diamond, emerald, quartz. Think of every hard thing that carries its own brilliance, shining with the luster that comes only from uncountable ages in the earth, in the dark, buried beneath unimaginable weight, bearing what seemed impossible, bearing it still. And you, shouldering the grief that you had thought so solid, so impermeable, in the terrible anguish you carried as a burden, now become, who can say what day it happened? A beginning. See how the sorrow in you slowly makes its own light, how it conjures its own fire. See how radiant even your despair has become in the grace of that sun. Did you think this would happen by holding the weight of the world, by giving in to the press of sadness and time? I tell you, this blazing in you, it does not come by choosing the most difficult way, the most daunting. It does not come by the sheer force of your will. It comes from that helpless place in you, the place that despite all cannot help but hope. The part of you that does not know how not to keep turning toward this world, to keep turning your face toward the sky, to keep turning your heart toward this unendurable earth, knowing that your heart will break, but turning it still. I tell you, this is how the stars get in your bones. This is how the brightness makes a home in you, as you open to the hope that burnishes every fractured thing it finds and sets it shimmering. A generous light that will not cease, no matter how deep the darkness grows, no matter how long the night becomes. Still, 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 the secret of secrets keeps turning in you, becoming beautiful, becoming blessed, kindling the luminous way by which you will emerge, carrying your shattered heart like a constellation within you, singing to the day that will not fail to come. About 2 years ago, Edna Groves brought up the subject of hope during our Sunday services meeting. We were discussing possible themes for services for the next year, and she said, I want to think about hope, but not the lighthearted kind of hope. I mean the hope that gets you through the hard times. And this was the first time that I had considered hope as a form of grit or courage. I had always thought of it as a kind of cheerfulness or innocence. Like in the Emily Dickinson poem, hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. I thought of hope as a songbird to brighten our days. But what Edna was suggesting and what Jan Richardson is suggesting in her poem are something quite different. Now, around the same time, I began reading books by Dr. Brené Brown. She's a social worker and a research professor at the University of Houston, and her work on shame and resilience has reached the New York Times bestseller list. Two of her books in particular, The Gifts of Imperfection and Daring Greatly, have helped me make sense of the depression and anxiety that have made parts of my life unbearable. Dr. Brown's research began with a focus on human connection, which the body of psychological research shows us is a core human need: food, water, shelter, connection. And as a result, she has also studied our fear of disconnection, which, since human connection is vital to our health, is an incredibly powerful fear. Our fear of disconnection is strongly tied to shame. Many people describe her as a shame researcher, but that doesn't always, draw the crowds. Let's talk about shame. And shame in her research is our belief that we are, for some reason, not worthy of love or connection. Shame usually shows up in our lives in the form of a thought that I am not something enough. So I'm not strong enough, I'm not kind enough, I'm not rich enough, I'm not thin enough, etc., etc., etc. I'm sure we can all think of something that has occurred to us at some point. I am not something enough. And her research demonstrates that shame is never a productive emotion. And I had to sit with that for a while. Never. It is only ever harmful. Feelings and thoughts of shame are highly correlated with addiction, depression, eating disorders, violence, bullying, and aggression. Unchecked shame can poison relationships in our lives, and those are the very elements of our lives that are intended to provide us with vital connection, a need. And so that's the virulence of shame, is that it undermines the things in our life that could be the antidote. And we all experience shame. We like to say that, someone is shameless, or, I have no shame about that. But we all experience shame in our life, even if we don't often internalize it, even those lucky few who have learned to not internalize it. And that's not the same as guilt. Guilt is in many ways the opposite of shame. It's actually productive to feel guilt, as long as it doesn't morph into shame in our minds. Guilt is, I screwed up. I made a mistake, even a terrible mistake, but I made a mistake. Shame is, I am a mistake. I am not good enough. I am a loser. So guilt can be a powerful sign that we are acting out of accordance with our values. And while we have models in our culture of how to appropriately deal with guilt through asking forgiveness or changing our habits, hard as those may be, we often know what we should be doing. What model do we have to wrestle with shame? And this is one thing that Dr. Brown worked to uncover. She interviewed people who approached life from a perspective that she called worthiness. It's the opposite of shame. Worthiness is an attitude that I am imperfect. I am imperfect, but I am enough. And she studied the habits and attitudes and beliefs of people who embraced their own worthiness and found that there is a path to resilience in the face of shame. One of the elements on that path is hope. And when she discovered that hope was vital to one's sense of worthiness, she was surprised. She hadn't expected to attach that word to it. She was thinking scrappiness, grit, perseverance. But the word that she found in the psychological literature was hope. Like me, she had never considered hope as anything more than a frothy, wispy sense of optimism and possibility. But she found a very different definition in research by C.R. Snyder. He spent his entire career focused on hope. And he learned that hope is not an emotion. It's a thought process. It happens when we can set a realistic goal, and then we are also able to find a pathway to that goal, which might include being flexible in how we accomplish it. And last of all, we believe in our ability to accomplish that goal. Now that sounds simple. It takes 1 minute to explain it. But let's not be fooled. Remember, it took an entire career for him to discover this. And it can take a lifetime to practice this. I think this is a good moment, before I give you an example of how this played out in my life, to consider those words and phrases and ideas that we have thrown in the cauldron this morning. Viewed through the lens of guilt versus shame, what have you put in the cauldron today? What have we contributed? Have we contributed with something that we are ashamed about, that we need to find a path of worthiness, to embrace, to overcome, to find hope? Or have we put something in the cauldron about which we are guilty, which we can find another method to cope with in our lives? And I'm going to give you an example of how shame and hope played out in my life around the time that I started reading Dr. Brown's work. In the spring of 2015, I was depressed. I was functional at work. I worked as an English teacher. But I was paralyzed at home in my free time by shame. It was mostly focused on my career. I would work from 6 in the morning till 4 or 5 at night. Then I would get home, and then I would stare at the mountain of work that still awaited me. And the thoughts that would run through my mind and prevent me from getting anything done were, I'm not a good enough teacher. I don't love teaching enough, apparently, to do the work that it requires. Or maybe I just can't work smart enough, you know that phrase, work smart, to get it all done. I am not succeeding at having a career, but if I give up this career, I will lose my definition of myself. And who will I be then? I will be nothing. And I should be happy with all that I do have in my life. I have so many other things besides this career, but I'm not happy enough. You hear the phrase? I am not happy enough. And I felt shame for being unhappy. And specifically, I realized later, I felt shame for being unhappy and not being able to change that by myself. I apparently place a very high value on self-sufficiency. I find it very hard to ask for help. I realize this now, but at the time, I only felt smallness and loneliness. I felt crushed by the weight of a rock that I couldn't figure out how to lift, that I didn't want anyone to help me with. It was like drowning, but not caring. And I wasn't just saying I'm not happy enough, I was also saying I'm not independent enough, I'm not powerful enough. And months of this, either lingering in the back of my head while I was teaching, or then surging up to smother whatever other thoughts I was trying to have. But then I remember sitting on my couch one day in my office, and the thoughts were swirling in my head. And then I remember my hand reaching out and picking up the phone. And that's how I remember it, my hand did it, to make an appointment with a therapist. And it was almost an out-of-body experience. I asked myself, am I doing this? And my mind replied, yes, I can do this. This I can do. And I don't even think that it was the making the call that I could do at that point. It was picking up the phone. I could pick up the phone. I could have hope about picking up the phone. And my hope pulled me out of my shame slowly over time, but it didn't feel like a thing with feathers perching in my soul. It was nothing like a bird, unless it was a turkey vulture of some sort. It felt like a leviathan, no shame on turkey vultures, but it was like a leviathan. It was some incomprehensible creature that came up out of the depths of my mind, and it grabbed hold of me. But instead of pulling it down, it pulled me up into the shallows, and it commanded me to keep swimming, gosh darn it. Keep going. I had to pick up the phone. It told me to make the call. It told me to attend the appointments. It told me to do the hard work day after day of learning to be more compassionate with myself, to embrace humility and take medication that helped me make progress, first with depression, then with insomnia. Keep swimming. Keep swimming, Gelder. And it sounds like such a small thing to retell the story. I'm not sure I can tell it in a way that explains how monumental it was, because in the moment, it was a revolutionary act. And in retrospect, it may have been the smallness of the act that made it possible. I didn't have much hope about being able to feel happy at that point, because I saw no pathway to get there. But I was hopeful about picking up a phone, and then I could be hopeful about making a phone call. Those were things I could do. So maybe hope doesn't have to be earth-shattering all the time. The hope that compelled me to do that one thing is the same hope that kept Anne Frank writing, that kept Keith Haring painting, that kept Ruby Bridges walking. When I remember that even a single hopeful act can make a significant change in a life or in a society, even the most humble moments of hope gain dignity. And the most amazing thing about hope that I learned is that because it's a thought process, we can learn it and we can teach it. We can practice it. We can get better at it. Hope is a function not of comfort, but struggle. And every time we get knocked down and we notice the pain and we decide to try again or to try something new, and every time that sadness floods our life and we recognize it and then we keep swimming, we build our ability to hope. I failed many times during my therapy. I still fail on a daily basis when it comes to being compassionate with myself and being resilient to shame. Even as I was writing this reflection, I have struggled to make all the components work together. And I considered giving up and just finding a sermon written by a minister about courage or hope. And I thought the words of a minister will be better crafted, they'll be more informed about the theological and philosophical background, and they would be. But I realized that even if I failed to explain myself perfectly, I don't have to be perfect. I could be imperfect and still be good enough. And we all can. Hope, I believe, is not the thing with feathers. It is our worthiness rising from the night of our shame and demanding to be noticed. It is every hard thing that carries its own brilliance, shining with the luster that comes only from uncountable ages in the earth, in the dark, buried beneath unimaginable weight, bearing what seemed impossible and bearing it still. We all have our burdens and our unimaginable weights, but I'm quite sure that buried in that rubble, there are gems that can outshine the sun.
This religious community exists by its mission as a fire exists by burning, but a fire cannot burn without fuel. And it is the time, the energy, the imagination, the vision, the creativity, the compassion, the love, and the financial support of the members and friends of this community that fuels our mission to nurture and sustain a welcoming, inclusive, and diverse liberal religious community that transforms lives and serves the world. Your support, the free and generous support of each and every member and friend of this community, is what fuels this community and its mission. And without your support, the flame of justice, community, and love cannot burn brightly to warm ourselves and be a beacon in a world threatened by division and fear. Your offering will be generously received.
There at the table with my head in my hand, column of numbers I just did not understand. You said add these together, carry the two. Now you can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. At a cold winter station, breathing into our gloves, it would change me forever, leaving for God knows what. You carried my bags, you said I'll wait for you. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. Late at night I called, and you answered the phone. The worst it had happened, and I did not want to be alone. You quietly listened. You said we'll see this through. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing. Breathless and pressed in hard times, hearts hung like laundry on backyard clotheslines. Impossible just takes a little more time. From the muddy ground comes a green volunteer. In a place we thought barren, new life appears. Morning will come whistling some comforting tune for you. You can do this hard thing. You can do this hard thing. It's not easy, I know, but I believe that it's so. You can do this hard thing.
During the next reading and the following chant, visualize what you want to accomplish in the coming year. Renewing a friendship, learning a skill, dedicating your talents to a passion or a dream, supporting a loved one, building a community, creating a work of art. And then share your realized passions for the upcoming year by passing the candle flame to your neighbor. We will feel our joined dreams surround us all as we are encircled by the flames of our community. When passing your flame, please bring the unlit candle to the lit candle to minimize dripping on chairs and floors. And when the chant is over, you may carefully blow out your candle. When a fire burns, it simultaneously destroys and creates. The wood or coal or paper is consumed and can never be reformed again from the ashes. But this destruction is necessary to create light and heat, light to show us multiple paths, and heat to warm a room, to melt metal in a crucible so that we can mold it, to melt glass so that we can shape it. Our lives are a roaring fire, continuously consuming our past and our present to fuel our visions of the future. What are you hoping for? What will you find the courage to do?
We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire, so brothers and sisters, spread your wings and fly. We are rising up like a phoenix from the fire, brothers and sisters, spread your wings and fly.
I invite you to focus your mind on your intention, the passion, dream, or future that your candle symbolizes. We now extinguish these candles, but not their spirit. May they warm and light our journeys. May we walk together, our hearts lighted by this inner flame. Thank you. Please hold on to your candle when you leave at the end of our service, place it in the basket that the stewards will be holding at the exit. In the words of the pagan tradition, our circle is now open, yet unbroken. As we extinguish our flaming chalice, the symbol of our time together, please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing hymn number 1028, Fire of Commitment, from the Teal hymnal.
are the ones we have been waiting for. We are not perfect, but we are perfectly fitted for this day. We are not without fault, but we can be honest to face our past as we chart a new future. We are the ones we have been waiting for. May we be bold and courageous to chart that new future. May we have faith in a future that is not known. We are the ones that we have been waiting for. Please join us in a few minutes on the patio just outside Creeps Hall as we burn our accumulated burdens for the past year. And now I invite you to greet one another, especially those you do not know.